Hello, and welcome to Economy 2.0, brought to you by the Silvio Gesell Foundation and the Henry George School. My name is Josh Sidman. Before we get started, I'd like to let you know about our upcoming episodes. On April 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be joined by Michael Linton. Michael is an important thinker in the alternative exchange and complementary currency space. He's credited with inventing the LETS, or Local Exchange Trading System model, having created the first LETS group in British Columbia in the 1980s. There are now thousands of LETS groups all around the world. For anyone who was with us for our episode with Tim Jenkin, the founder of the Community Exchange System, you may remember Michael, as he was in the audience for that episode and joined the conversation. I've remained in touch with him since then and look forward to what I'm sure will be a fascinating discussion about monetary systems and alternative exchange models. And then on May 6th at 1 p.m., we'll talk with Clive Menzies, who is also a visionary thinker in the alternative exchange space. Clive is from England and writes on a variety of subjects, including economics, politics, climate change theory, terrorism, and perpetual war at his website, outersight.org. One of the topics I look forward to discussing with Clive is his vision of a more advanced system of technology-enabled economic exchange, which makes money unnecessary and obsolete. Okay, for those of you joining us for the first time, Economy 2.0 is a web series based on the idea that we may be approaching or already going through a paradigm shift in terms of how we conduct our economic lives. Whether this shift occurs gradually or suddenly, whether it's a result of deliberate rethinking of our economic systems by forward-thinking people who recognize the flaws in the status quo, or whether it's forced upon us in the form of a crisis or collapse, more and more people are coming to the conclusion that the future will likely look very different than what we've become accustomed to. Just what that future will look like is anybody's guess. The purpose of this series is to explore different visions of what our economic future might look like. Given the tumult and uncertainty that characterizes the global economy these days, this seems like a timely subject to discuss. As I've argued many times, I believe that a precondition for finding healthy, constructive, rational solutions to the challenges we face is that we first break free from the artificially narrow framework of debate in which economics is seen as a struggle between two opposed, mutually exclusive alternatives of capitalism and socialism. That framework has brought us to where we now find ourselves, where economic inequality perpetually increases, where a tiny group at the top thrives while the vast majority of people struggle just to stay afloat, where recurring crises are a regular feature of our economic lives, and where our systems of production, consumption, and exchange threaten to destroy the planet. Neither capitalism nor socialism has solved any of these problems. Expecting that either will do so in the future is an exercise in repeating the same actions and expecting different results. Therefore, those who see the folly in this approach need to change the entire framework within which we think about our economic lives. The idea that economics is a dualistic struggle between capitalism and socialism leads us to the conclusion that the only options we have are to accept the obviously harmful, unfair aspects of the capitalistic status quo, or to instead empower central authority to govern all aspects of our economic lives. Adopting this framework puts us between the devil and the deep blue sea, having to choose between two unacceptable options. This is why the conventional framework is so harmful, and why we need to dismantle it if we ever hope to find positive, constructive solutions to the enormous challenges we face. The two organizations which bring you this series exist to promote the economic perspectives of two thinkers from the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Silvio Gesell and Henry George. Both developed what today would be classified as heterodox economic perspectives, meaning that they lie outside of the confines of what would be considered conventional economic thought. And both focused on two subjects that are absolutely central to determining the quality and conditions of our economic lives, specifically our systems of land and money. Today's guest has also spent a lot of time thinking about both of these subjects. So let me bring him in now. There we go.
Hello.
Teun van Sambeek joins us today from Rwanda, where his work on providing affordable housing has taken him from his native country of the Netherlands. He began his career in IT and has been involved in computer programming for most of his life. He then went into the field of real estate development. So Teun, welcome. Why don't you get us started by telling us how you went from being a computer programmer in the Netherlands to building housing in Africa, and then to designing a proposal for an alternative monetary system?
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, my main studies was construction. I'm a construction engineer, but even before I went to the university, I was already programming. Even before the first Commodore 64 came out of the market, I was programming little calculators and just to understand what programming was all about. And I did that sort of throughout my entire career. I even did some courses on the university besides construction, also into IT. So I know quite well how to program stuff. So and I use that skill throughout my career. What also happened is that in my studies, I studied not only, let's say, construction, but also quite a focus on financial engineering. So after my, let's say, call it, I think it's a PhD in English, I went to the University of Amsterdam to study, to become, let's say, a master of real estate. And a big portion of that study is to do economic calculations. My thesis there was about the IRR. I found out that there are some issues with the IRR formulas, and because of that, I needed to go quite deep into a subject and IRR calculations and interest calculations, things like that. So that's sort of where my skills are. Throughout my career, I did, let's say, financial engineering of real estate. You can call it like that, making sure that budgets are met, but also that the projects are feasible, properly financed. So I had a lot of meetings with banks and with investment companies. I also worked for a few years in for a pension fund in the Netherlands, the ABP. The largest pension fund in the Netherlands, actually, and for their real estate department. And I advised the board of directors in their, let's say, decisions on investing, whether or not to invest in projects. So a lot of, let's say, financial engineering and looking into relations between finance and construction. You can call it like that. In 2004, there was a quite big crisis in the Netherlands. I had my own companies, and we did project management of large projects. Then I decided to work a few years for that pension fund, which I did like about 7 years. And after 7 years, that was in 2011, I got the opportunity to join a group of investors and entrepreneurs to fund a precast concrete factory in Morocco, and that was really attractive for me because my job shifted more and more to finance, but also to law. There were I had to deal with some let's say not my own companies, but let's say we had big projects where a contractor went bankrupt, and then you have a lot of court cases. So you spend a lot of time in court to solve financial issues and things like that. And I wasn't building anymore. So with the opportunity in Morocco, I thought, okay, I can go there and start doing what I really like is to build larger projects. When we did an assessment of the Moroccan market, it turned out that the Moroccan market is quite. I think let me. Oh, yeah. So my video went off. Sorry. When we did the assessment of the Moroccan market, it turned out that the market was very closed off. So it was very difficult for a foreign company to come in and produce concrete elements, basically. So I left that group and started to look at affordable housing projects in more sub-Saharan Africa. So I went to Ghana for a few years. I went to Nigeria for like 7 years or 8 years. And last year I decided to move to Rwanda to do an assessment of a precast concrete factory that is here, that also does affordable houses. And because that is sort of my goal, what I try to do in Africa. So what happened, and that was in Nigeria, that was about 8 years ago. I was doing all kinds of designs of affordable houses and do the calculations, what kind of rent people should pay, what would be the sales prices, and compare that with the income of the people in Nigeria. And what you see, and it wasn't not a big surprise, but what you see is that even if you go, or let's say, to the lowest possible price in construction, then it is still impossible for people to rent. And even not they will never be able to buy an apartment. So, and that was the moment that I said, so why is this? Why is it not possible to make these houses affordable? And that is sort of when I went deeper into the financial system. I started looking at the let's say UN Habitat. I did a proposal for a slum in Lagos, and I noticed that I didn't get any response. It was as if they were not even interested in finding what is sort of the lowest possible price where you can sort of develop of redevelop slums on a bigger scale. And that led me to go deeper and deeper, and then I sort of saw how money was created, and the obvious, let's say, issues that are related to that. And the year that I did that studies, also Bitcoin came up, and also there was more and more talk about UBI. So I thought, well, Bitcoin is interesting, also with my programming background. So I looked into hashing, I looked into cryptography. So and I'm quite for me it's quite easy to understand how it works. So I could understand quite quickly what Bitcoin was, what a blockchain is, how these technologies go about. So I thought perhaps you can build a sort of a UBI system based on blockchain. That was my sort of an initial thought that I had. And I wrote a book about it because I thought when I write a book about it, I'm sort of forced to really pick out all the essences of these technologies. And because when you write a book, it's there, everybody can see what you studied. So it's very important that you do your studies and your sourcing very well. So I went to all that process, like half a year, fully focused on writing that book. So I knew quite well what the possibilities were of Bitcoin and let's say cryptocurrencies, and also what the system of UBI meant. What was interesting is that what I found out that in the beginning, let's say the older publications about UBI, the U, the letter U was used for unconditional, and in later publication, you can see it became uniformal or sorry universal. So the U became from unconditional to universal. And if you see what's going on in society now, I think it's quite clear why this change has been made, because let's say the powers that control the financial system, if you look at the CBDC, is all about control and about conditions. So the financial system that, or let's say the digital system that are now developed, are developed really with the mindset of being conditional. So you can go outside your if you go outside your 15-minute village or your city, then you can't spend your money there. So, and that's because of climate change. And if you don't spend your money within a month, then you get a tag, an extra tax, things like that. So with that technology, they can really manipulate society, and that is completely different what the unconditional basic income was about. So I think, and I sort of saw that. And another thing that I saw was about cryptocurrencies, is that how money is created, because I was always focused on how money is created. So how does that work in Bitcoin? You have so you have these initial offerings where certainly, let's say 80% of the coins are already mined before anything sort of really happens, before they are listed. And if you look at that, then you can already see that the distribution of that coin, let's say Bitcoin, but especially coins that came later, before they really were available for the broad public, 80%, 90% was already in the hands of a very small group, and which sort of worsens the situation we already have, because at the moment, I did some calculations. I think that way over 95% of all the assets in the world are in the hands of a very small group. I did some calculation about real estate, because I sort of, I'm also sort of evaluator, so you can make estimates. Okay, if you look at New York, how much real estate is there, how much is in the economy, and then you can see. I think I did some estimates. I think, let's say that the global value of all the real estate and infrastructure that we have, it's about $1,000 trillion, in that order, if you just calculate everything. And if you look at what is in the actual economy, it's probably something like 50 trillion, or no, perhaps 200 trillion, somewhere there. But there is still, let's say, 800 trillion is just outside our view. It's all locked into real estate and in factories and things like that. So and when you have Bitcoin and you or other cryptocurrencies, and they get already, let's say, 80% locked in before even being distributed, nothing will be solved in let's say the fair redistribution of money, because that is sort of what UBI is about. And there are also other, I think, major issues with cryptocurrencies, especially when you go to, let's say, I lived for quite a while in Lagos, and if you see how people manage money and how they manage their let's say devices, it's sort of unthinkable to me that people that are just, let's say, that hardly know how to use a phone can keep their secret keys safe. It will be very difficult to sort of protect the general public for all kinds of attacks of let's say hackers. You have also very good hackers in Nigeria. You can see them in the restaurants. They're young boys. They call them Yahoo boys. They're extremely wealthy, and they spend the day scamming people. It's just what they do, and you can imagine that these guys, if you sort of release them on normal markets, let's say where people have their street food, it will be a big mess if you use cryptocurrencies, especially if they are, let's say, cryptocurrencies like Monero or Pirate Chain, these really well, let's say, hidden systems. So when you lose your money there, there's no way you can find out who to get money, where is it going. There's just no way, because the cryptocurrency, the encryption on these coins is amazing. The technology is amazing, but it sort of helps, especially the people that scam other people out of their money, and that is also some, let's say, that idea of secrecy. Hiding your transactions became more and more clear to me that is something that you just want to flip. You don't want that, because in reality the secrecy is only helping, let's say, the criminals, the politicians that let's say steal money. I saw some crazy examples of people that had, let's say, politicians that had like hundreds very expensive Mercedes parked in a garage. There was an occasion that there was like, they found like $2 billion in an apartment in cash, and crazy things happen in Nigeria. So transparency is, I think, the biggest enemy of the people that want this corruption. Because when you make transactions transparent, then it becomes very difficult for them to hide. So all these things started to become clear, and so my initial thought to sort of wrap UBI into a cryptocurrency kind of structure started to faint, and I started to experiment with, let's say, more or full transparent systems. Also, initially I thought also it need to be decentralized, but I think that it's also not that important anymore. I think that is also a very interesting discussion, if money really should be decentralized, if that helps. Just to give you a little insight, is that what I think is that if you have like a parallel society, let's say a village, a remote village somewhere, I think that village can very easily just install a simple server, or even a big computer with a big Excel sheet, and keep track on the transactions like that. The idea that everything needs to be global and hidden, and that is an idea that is quite the opposite idea of creating small parallel local societies. So these things sort of came into my mind, and that led me. I think I started like 5 years ago. I think it's 4 years ago. I started with the first real iteration, what has now become 1 coin per hour. It was also the idea was, I think the main idea is that instead of backing money with gold, money should be backed with like hours, and there are some studies done to back it by, let's say, working hours, and I thought quite long about that, if that will work. But I think when you connect the value of money to an hour that somebody works, the problem you get is that you need to define work, and that will become a big swamp, because what is work? So somebody that studies for 20 years to become, let's say, a neurosurgeon or some very complicated. So that the time that he studies is that work. And you can say, okay, that's work. But if that doctor decides after 20 years to stop his study and do something else because it turns out not what he wants or whatever happens. So did he work? So it's very complicated to actually say, okay, this hour is actual work. You can also think about, let's say, a pregnant woman that is taking care of, let's say, the health of her unborn baby. Is that work? Well, you can really argue that, I think, and that becomes very complicated because then you need to start to value things, and when you start to make sort of a list and values, and then you are in the same swamp again, because then you have some, let's say, leaders that can say, okay, this is work, that is not work, and the entire purpose on sort of making it having an equalizer is gone. So that's when I didn't need to think very long about that. Let's say I took 2 weeks to really seriously think, will that work? I tried some things, and it just becomes too complicated. So then I said, no, it should be, let's say, live hours, just live hours. And that is a very nice equalizer, because then it doesn't matter if you are, let's say, a baby, or if you are, let's say, an adult that's capable of working, or you are, let's say, an elderly person that is already dementing or something like that. All these people get, let's say, 1 coin every hour. That was sort of the idea that I had, and in reality, that is quite fair. I don't, at this moment, I don't think there is another system to back money that is more fair than that, and that is sort of logic. I consider myself a bit as an autistic person. I'm always looking for the logic in things, and to me that is really a clean, very clean, logical ways, and because you can't sort of tamper with that. It's almost, let's say, impossible, or you need to pretend that you are 2 persons, things like that. But that is sort of, especially in smaller societies, that will be very difficult to pull off. And I mean, when you connect a stream of coins to one lifetime, then you can imagine that somebody wants to create a sort of a copy of himself, that just some little changes, and then he has one group that he pretends, okay, this is me, and then another group that he has, this is me. But these groups, when they can see into the exchanges and let's say the transactions, then it is almost impossible to prevent that one time there will be an overlap between these groups, and people will find out you have like 2 different strains of income. And that idea, I did one iteration where I tried to use a little bit of encryption and a little bit of security, but now I'm sort of in the 1 coin age iteration of this system. I'm completely open, so everybody can see everybody's transactions in this system, and that is how you check it. So you check your coins. Which means you don't have any banks. It's the same as let's say, Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. So there's no banks, but now you are responsible for checking the validity of your coins. So basically, if I do a transaction with somebody, I need to know if I can trust this person. Is this person trustworthy? Did he make perhaps 2, let's say, iterations of himself, or 3 or 4? Is that possible? And if I'm quite sure that it's not possible, then I can accept his coins. And it is possible that I encounter an imposter, and I accept coins that are, so let's say, not trustworthy. Then my problem will be that the other person that I want to bring these coins to pay for a bread or something like that, that other person will say, okay, I check this person, but these coins don't look valid, so that the other person won't accept my coins. And because of that, I have a sort of responsibility to myself to check if people are real, if these coins from these people are real. But that is sort of how that system works.
Can I interrupt you on that point?
Yes.
Can you explain to me from a technical standpoint how one would distinguish between what you're describing as legitimately created coins and illegitimately created coins, and what would be the consequences? Let's say that the first recipient of an illegitimate coin did not pick up on the fact that it was illegitimate and accepted it, and then used it and passed it on to somebody else, and that the illegitimacy of the coin is not discovered until the fifth transaction down the line. First of all, how is that illegitimacy identified? What is the mechanism for enforcing legitimacy versus illegitimacy, and how would the situation be rectified by what I'm still unclear about the decentralized versus centralized nature of what you're describing, but let me throw that question.
Yeah, so I think the decentralized or centralized, that is another aspect. You can just separate these two. So what you are asking is how do you trace a coin back to its origin? Now, the nice thing about full transparency is something that I think there are only very few initiatives that do this, where you can, let's say, follow every coin, and it's not a coin, it's basically a portion of a coin, or let's say a group of coin. It's like a number, it's just a number. It can be like 6.357 coins are coming from this person. And then you can trace back, okay, who is this person? Because every transaction is open, you can follow the coin to its originator. When you create one coin per hour, you yourself are the originator of that coin. And as long as that coin is being used, the people can trace it back to me. So the first person that accepts my coins, he needs to sell these coins to the next one. So the next one will not only check, will only need to check, let's say, the first person, let's say the originator. So you need to go back to the originator. So how credible is this originator of the coins? Because the originator, they can make, let's say, two versions of themselves. And that is quite easy. So you could make a system to prevent that happening, that is checking all the transactions all the time and see, okay, this is probably not. But I think that even is not necessary. I think that it is possible for, let's say, a simple device to just trace back who is the originator of this coin, and can I trust him? And this trust is based on the hands where these coins went through. Because the first person to accept these coins needs to check this. Because he needs to sell these coins to the second one. The second person also needs to check this, because he needs to pass it to a third one. So this coin has been, let's say, checked like perhaps 10 times or 50 times before it comes to me. So all these 50 people must have made a mistake, have not properly checked the originator, and that becomes, let's say, a sort of an impossibility, because there are so many ways to check if somebody is genuine, and genuine means there are no two different versions of himself. It's very easy to let's say, check that, and what happens is as longer let's say this economy runs, the easier it becomes to trust these coins, because it went to so many hands and so many, let's say, checks that let's say your software does. The software is just comparing. It's just comparing. Okay, did I met this person before? Is there another, let's say, little, because everybody uses, let's say, a personal, I call it the personal blockchain. You can also call it a sort of a cash book. So everybody has his list of all the transactions that he did, and these are shared with each other. So you have a lot of data where all these people come together, where you can sort of cross-check all these transactions. And in the end, especially when you start with a small community, that becomes really strong. There's sort of no way around it. It's really, to me, it's almost impossible to create a second version of yourself, because you will always be caught out. And when you're caught out, then you have a big problem, because then, let's say, all the coins you have and everything that you do is sort of in the open, so people don't trust you at that moment. So when your trust is lost, then you have an issue, because what are you going to do in your society? How can I rebuild this trust? So once your trust is lost, you really have a big problem. So I think that, especially when you start, and that's what I try to do also in my community. I have a small community with, like, let's say 30, 35 people, to see how that works. Are these people trusting each other, and how does that go? But obviously, in reality, the economy is different. When you buy a car, it will be very difficult to see how all these components are financed and how that is done. So but to me, that is a sort of a second step. The first step is, how can you create a system that is fair, and where money is created in a fair way, and how do you go about, especially, transparency. And I had a very nice discussion this week. There's another initiative that is sort of doing the same. It's called Circles. It's from Berlin. They I think they did it after they saw what we were doing. They changed it also to 1 coin per hour, and they also changed their interest rate. They had an interest rate of 7%. They changed it also into a demurrage after they saw that I did the same. We come back to that later. But the interesting thing is, I had a discussion with one of the founders of Circles this week about, I call it originating, so going back to the origins of the coin. And he was telling me that Circles was like a quasi fungible coin. And fungibility is basically, am I able to see where this money is coming from? Let's say cash is absolutely fungible. Perhaps the numbers on the, let's say, the serial numbers on the let's say the paper money, it's a little bit less fungible. But let's say a coin is almost impossible to know through which hands this coin went through. So let's say coins are really fungible. And let's say the money that we create is absolutely not fungible at all. So you can track everything to its basis. Actually, Bitcoin is also what I think most, let's say, experts don't really know, that is that Bitcoin looks like fungible, that you can't trace the coins, but there are now, let's say, registers where they connect and they do it to KYC, so know your client. Because of KYC, they can connect a person to a wallet, and then this wallet is a number that is in the blockchain. And they did that for almost any, let's say, wallet in the Bitcoin space, which means that Bitcoins are fully traceable. It's as the same as sort of 1 coin age now, because once it's open, you can follow it back to, and then it's just up to the software to see what you're going to do with it. And I call the part of the software to do that, you can call it's like a sentinel. So you can have a sort of a process running that is only focused on tracing where money is coming from, and if that is legit, or if there are mistakes, or if there is something wrong.
And
So Yeah.
break it one more
Yeah.
time. I don't want to get bogged down in one small detail. I want to get to demurrage, which is, to me, it's fascinating that you came to the conclusion that demurrage is the correct methodology, but you came to that conclusion for different reasons and in a different way than I came to that conclusion. And I really want to get to that. But before we do, I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around the absence of fungibility in what you're describing. So my reflexive response is that sounds massively inefficient to have to, every time you transact, investigate the legitimacy or lack thereof of every unit of currency involved in that transaction. How could we possibly conduct a complex, efficient exchange system on the basis of a of a medium of exchange which is completely non-fungible, it would seem?
Yeah. Yeah. So that looks difficult, but actually that is pure software. So it's just a program that gives you an indication. Okay, this is secure, this is not secure. I got like an indicator of 10 levels, and and then you basically can choose. And there's always a risk. So there's a risk that you have coins that are not let's say legit, and that can damage you. But I think what we're also discussing here is this is a complete different economy than we are used to, because in this economy it starts, I call it islands. You can start doing this in an island, just a small community, where this system is just sort of a replacement for barter. And that is also what I like about the Silvio Gesell theory. It's money is basically a medium of exchange and not a store of value. That should be the function, and that is the function that I'm focusing on. But when you have an economy that is with, let's say, a type of money or a unit, because I don't like to have value in money at all. So money should be, I think, but that's another step. Is that society should be based on, let's say, voluntary exchanges. So there shouldn't be forced taxes. There shouldn't, and money should be like like a thumbs up. So you did something for me, I like it, I give you some money. Perhaps you can indicate what you normally would get, and I can give you that money. Perhaps I give you some more. Perhaps I give you some less if I'm not really satisfied. But it should be sort of a voluntary exchange. And then you go into voluntarism, how that works. And I think when you have a proper distribution of money, like I propose, then you will get into a sort of a world of abundance. I'm doing another project now besides the one coin age is called Copiania, where we describe a society that is based on this type of money. Because what will happen, but it's again another story. If you introduce a money system that like this, let's say the difference in wealth, the wealth inequality, will very rapidly. That could be 1 year, will be very rapidly balance out, and that is very, I think, also very difficult for people to wrap their minds around how fast this can go. But that's another discussion. So, but to come back to your question, so how safe is it? Because that's sort of the question. How safe is this? And how efficient is it to keep it safe? And how important is it to keep it safe? And I think that and that is sort of what sort of emerges. Is that the right what you can see out of this experiment is that security is not as important as it is now, because now we're living in a world of scarcity. So you need to hold on to your money because you need to buy this next bread, and otherwise you have a big issue. In a world where let's say income is distributed evenly, you have very different problems. That is not your main concern, that somebody steals your money anymore, because this money is coming every day. You have a sort of a universal basic income. There's sort of a net that where you in the circus to catch, and we call it the vangnet in Dutch, to catch the people that sort of are almost going out of society because they can't manage it. In a system where you have sort of a UBI kind of a system running, you don't have that problem anymore. So money becomes way less important, and I think that in the end, in a world of abundance, money can be phased out totally. And your next guest, I think, is very interesting. When he told me about that, it looks very interesting, because that I also see that emerge. Like after this, if the system collapses, we can bring a proper financial system in place. I always think of one coin age as a temporary thing to sort of bridge the mindset of people in the next, let's say, 20, 30 years, to equal out the income inequality, and then we don't have that issue anymore. Then we don't need to hassle and you get a complete. And I think we can't even imagine how a society like that looks like, and that's where we started a project to start to dream about how this could look like, and what does it mean if you do that. But again, another story. So perhaps I should say something about demurrage at this moment. I don't know. Or do you have another question?
We've got a hand raised, and actually I forgot to mention at the top that anyone in the audience is welcome to join the conversation by using the raise hand button, which is under the React tab on the bottom of your on your Zoom toolbar. So let's bring in Anthony, who's got his hand raised, and then we can continue. So Anthony, welcome.
Thank you. Teun, very interesting conversation. I just have a technical question going back a little bit. I was following along quite nicely, but then you talked about fungible, and I lost you there. Are you saying fungible is the ability to see where the money comes from, or the disability to see where the money comes from?
Yes, in crypto is the disability to see. So if you have if it's really fungible, then that's what I then it's you can't see where it's where it's coming from, where it's going to. You can't follow it at all. So there is no connection between a person and the coins that are in the blockchain.
Right, and the point being that it could be replaced by a fake coin.
Yeah. So when you lose your coins, when somebody is able to let's say break your private key and takes your money, then it's lost. It's because everything is encrypted. It's very, very heavily, let's say, secured, and let's say what they do is this transaction is just hacked, let's say, chopped up and all kinds of stuff. So it's not that you can't put it back. So you don't know what happened with that transaction. Where it's coming from is just gone.
Right. Okay, that's just the point I wanted to clarify, but okay. I'll have some broader questions, I'm sure, as we go along. Thank you.
Let me just, I still am not ready to quite yet to move on, because I still don't grasp how, like, I know that in the Bitcoin blockchain, there are all of these horrific stories of thefts, of loss of coins, and that because of the fact that it is decentralized, there's essentially no way to rectify those situations.
No, that has nothing to do with each other. Actually, the decentralization is in crypto. It is, they call it decentralized because you don't need a central bank to let's say to vouch for the transactions. So everybody can do it on his own. you can add, let's say, something to the blockchain, and it will just go around. So you can use it decentralized, basically. So without a central institute. So the blockchain is going around the world, sort of,
But
to every corner.
let's make a concrete
that is
example so that we, because I think we're getting too vague. Let's take a concrete example of a theft or a fraudulent transaction or a kidnapping and a ransom where the right and wrong, the legality of a transaction is clear and demonstrable. With a decentralized system, how do you rectify a fraudulent, illegal transaction?
Now, so Bitcoin, what Bitcoin does is, Bitcoin, you can see all the transactions. They are not, let's say, encrypted or meshed up. So the blockchain of Bitcoin is very, very transparent. You can see this address did this, spent like 50 Bitcoin or 5 Bitcoins, paid it to this wallet. So, and that you can just follow these numbers, okay? The only thing that is encrypted in Bitcoin is let's say, your private key. It's like your password in a bank. So you use a password so that you are the only one that can, let's say, do something with that wallet. Because you need to have a password to be able to change something in that wallet. So you need to pay something or to accept something. But if you look at, for example, the blockchain of Monero, what happens is you don't see these addresses. If I look at the blockchain of Monero, it's a blur. Everything is like cut up. So all these addresses are cut up, and only that system sort of can put that together. So it's not only to access your wallet, but everything what happens in this blockchain is also blurred, and it's not traceable anymore. So what happens if somebody steals your Bitcoin, you can go to your Bitcoin. You can go to the blockchain of Bitcoin and say, okay, my blockchain, my Bitcoin went to this address. So you can't see that. It's easy to see that, and then you can go, let's say, to the police or to the government. There are, let's say, probably the CIA has this list where all these addresses are connected to the wallets, where, let's say, actual addresses of people or names of people are connected to these wallets. And then you can see, okay, my Bitcoin was stolen by this address. Who is this person? And the CIA can check, okay, that is that person. If this happens in Monero, it's gone. So nobody can sort of, they tried.
Coin seems to have frozen up here. Hopefully he'll reconnect. Let me send him a message.
And here is, can you hear me, Josh?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah. And here is exactly the problem of being technologically dependent on these sort of things. Doesn't always work.
I know that Teun has answers to this. From what I've heard him say in other contexts, his system does not even necessarily require internet, because internet, of course, is a point of centralization. I don't quite understand how what he's describing works at a technical level, but I believe he has. I believe he would agree with the point you just made and has an answer to it. I of course can't give you that answer. We seem to have
If this existed through technical plot or deliberate. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me add him to the screen.
Sorry.
All right. Yeah. Sorry.
Perhaps, I don't know. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I think I sort of try to explain how these two are different.
In the interest of, I'm not there yet in my own mind, but we're already an hour into the 2 hour
Yeah.
time frame, and we've got a lot more to talk about. So I'm gonna set aside my lack of fully comprehending that particular
Yeah.
point, and I'd like to move on, if we could, to demurrage, because you, like I said, you arrived at demurrage in a different way than Silvio Gesell did, and I'd like to hear you narrate how you got there.
Yeah. So actually, it's the reason to
Actually,
introduce it
sorry,
is
before you explain that, could you tell the audience, because maybe not everybody knows what demurrage is, could you tell us
yeah
what demurrage is and then explain how you got there?
yeah exactly. So um, demurrage is like a sort of a negative interest. Um, if you have, let's say, if you have money in a bank, that normally you get interest, and now we have a system where you get 1 coin every hour. But who is going to pay for the interest? So if I save that money, where would that interest come from? So you don't have a bank, and what Silvio Gesell did is it's sort of a complete different idea. What Silvio Gesell did in Burgle is that he issued, let's say, vouchers, and you need to use these vouchers, or else every month, I think it was 1% is deducted from these vouchers. So your money gets less valuable. So that sort of incentivizes you to spend it faster. It's like a negative interest. It's like you have money in the bank, but instead that you get interest, you need to pay interest. So you better spend it, otherwise it just vaporizes. So, and in a situation of deflation, this really helps, because when you have deflation, people start to hoard their money. Money just stops going around in your economy, and the people that don't that need the money to eat, so they get big issues, and that's what was happening in Wurgel. And with that solution, with these vouchers, they were able to turn it around. That was for that particular situation, it worked very well. But I think that the theory of Gesell is wider. He says basically you should do this always, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But I didn't know it by then, so I wasn't aware of this at all. My problem that I had, why I would put, let's say, a negative interest rate on my system, or the 1 coin system, has nothing to do with, let's say, getting the money running faster or not. It has influence. It will influence it, but it's not the main reason I introduced it. The main reason is very simple. To me, and that is about inflation. So to me, inflation is equal to money creation. So let's say when you have, and that's just math, and it's just logic to me. If you have, you're on an island and you have $1,000, and you have like a few items that you can buy with it. If I introduce another $1,000, then suddenly everything becomes twice as expensive. So that is equal. Not immediately, so there will be some fluctuations, but in the end, that will equal out. So to me, let's say in the entirety, let's say in the average, if you can call it an average, then each time money is created, prices will go up. Some go fast, some don't go at all. But as an average, all the prices will go up equally. That is just inflation. So and inflation doesn't make any sense. To me, inflation is just theft. Because the people that create money, basically, because they create it out of nothing, they make a loan out of it. At that money, they steal from the entire world that portion that they introduced. Because all the prices will go up, and they just hold that money that they just created, and they can buy something with it. It's to me, it's like insanity. Why do we allow something like this? So inflation is like criminal. It shouldn't exist at all, and it doesn't need to exist. And the way to get rid of inflation is to keep the money supply constant. That's the only thing that you need to do. If people wouldn't die, then you can say, okay, this is the money. So if you have this amount of people and you have this amount of money and you have this amount of products, then there's no inflation. Let's say as a general. Then and inflation is then, if you see price fluctuations, it has nothing to do with inflation. It's just like these people were able to produce this product more efficient than the other ones, so now they can offer it at a lower price. That is efficiency, but that is not inflation or deflation or anything like that. So I look at inflation as pure, let's say, the money supply. So my goal was to keep the money supply equal. So how you do that is when you, let's say, create one coin every hour, then you can imagine if you have like 10 billion people, then you add every hour, you add 10 billion coins to the money supply, which is like an endless inflation. So the inflation is just go up endlessly. So and you don't want that, because you want to have the prices flatten out, because then people start to get a feeling what something needs to cost. An egg is always like so many cents, or is 1 coin, and a bottle of milk is 2 coins, and so these prices settle in your mind, and you want to have that sort of constant. You can let it change. It's just a choice. Let's say your UBI system wouldn't work worse if you would do that, but it doesn't make sense to me to make prices increase permanently. Why? You can easily keep it constant by adding using a percentage, like a demurrage, so a negative percentage. And the funny thing is, it's a very simple formula. And it works with every percentage, let's say, above 0. So if you have 1%, or you have 10%, or you have 50%, in a certain amount of time, the money supply becomes almost constant. And almost means that it's, let's say, you go to 0.000001, let's say, sort of a coin that is not that it's not really constant, but let's say in theory it's constant, and it's very easy to understand. There will be a point in time where you get 1 coin, and let's say you don't spend any coins, so you keep receiving these coins, but each time you receive a coin, you get more coins, and at a certain, in my case, the demurrage percentage, or in the 1 coin each case, is 0.99995, and which is like equal to 1 minus 1 divided by 20,000. So it's 1/20,000th of a coin is removed from that coin every hour. Now, what happens if I have 20,000 coins, and that happens about after 20 years of receiving 1 coin and having to pay the demurrage, or removing the demurrage, there will be a point in time that you have 19,999 coins. That's the amount of coins that I have. So now I get 1 coin to make it 20,000, but the demurrage is 1 divided by 20,000. So I lose also 1 coin. So after 20 years of receiving coins, I get 1 coin, but I also lose 1 coin from the demurrage if I wouldn't spend anything. And this applies for everybody that participates, which means that in that system, you can't have more than 20,000 coins per living person, because each person that arrives at that point, so you can't get more, because you need to pay the demurrage of your entire capital. And you can also see it like this. So each time you pay this coin, so if I have 20,000 coins, this coin is distributed about the entire community. So it's sort of a permanent UBI. So each time, let's say, the value of all these coins go down, it compensates for the coins that are added. And that stops if you use this factor 99995, then it stops at 20,000. For example, circles, they use a percentage of 7% per year. The percentage at one coin each uses per year is 99995 per hour, but this per year is about 35%, which is quite high. I think Silvio Gazelle was 12%, 1% per month, 12%, which works very fine, but it was not a real UBI. So I think that if you introduce a real UBI, you can even go higher than 12%.
Just to address that point, the 12% was the demurrage rate that was used in Virgil. Virgil happened after Gazelle had already died, so we didn't attribute it to him. It happened a couple of years after he died. His proposed demurrage rate was 5% annually. But he said that that's essentially just his best guess, and that the optimal demurrage rate would need to be discovered in practice, that you cannot work it out in theory.
No, it's not possible. And I think they also tried it in I think it was Utah or somewhere in the US, where they used like 60%, and people didn't go along with that. So that was, let's say, also not the right rate. But I think in let's say in the case of one coin each, you need to think about that this one coin is also added all the time. And that was also not the case in Virgil, where people where I think these vouchers were just introduced into the society, and that was it. And then I think there were 2 or 3 more times when a new, let's say, stack of these vouchers were distributed. So there was not really, so you didn't have like an income certainty with these vouchers, but it was to make sure that there was an alternative to let's say the real money that sort of made the velocity of the money in that village higher, which it does. So when you have the demurrage, you have an incentive to spend your coins, because if you're like a millionaire and you need to spend 35% per year on your money, it's better to invest it. And that is, I think, what Gazelle, let's say, had in mind. You need to get rid of it. You need to spend it. And that's the same. Just to finish my story, let's say in circles, they use 7% per year. And last week I did a calculation for them. It means that they will end up with like 125,000 coins per user, instead of, let's say, the 20,000 coins per user that we have, because we have 35%. The amount of money that gets into circulation is lower than when you have a lower percentage, because it will take longer, way longer. In their case, it takes about 120 years to get to a situation where you have, like, if you don't spend anything, where you have 125,000 coins, and you get one coin, and you need to pay 7%, and that coin goes. Let's say you can cancel them out, these 2 coins. That takes like 100, and to me, it doesn't seem right to have an entire society wait for 125 years before the money supply becomes constant. I think you want to have that quicker, like, and 20 years seems to me like, but it's just a guess. It's not really just a guess, but it's just a guess that it's like 20 years seems like a nice time for the economy to settle again, for the prices to settle again, and and then have sort of a constant new system where you don't have inflation anymore. There's another reason why I use 20,000, because when you let's say calculate the entire money in the world, it's probably something like 250 trillion. If you look at global, if you go from the theory that all money is created in debt, and you just look at all the global debt, then you arrive at somewhere about 250. That was a few years ago. Perhaps now we're already at 300 trillion. But if you divide 300 trillion by, let's say, 10 billion people, then you arrive at 30,000 coins. I think when I did that calculation, that's 7.8 billion people. You get around 35,000 coins. To me, not all these coins are, let's say, going in a lot of them are locked up somewhere. So let's say the normal people don't use 35,000 coins, have that to their disposal. It's way lower. So I thought 20,000 coins per person as a money supply looks reasonable. So that means, let's say, a family of 5 can amount about 100,000 coins. And I think that if you do that, do it like that, the prices will look like the prices in dollars. So if you, let's say, if a gallon of milk is like $5, I don't know, then in that new system, it should be somewhere in the same region. That's why I thought that. So I had 2 reasons to choose the 20,000 coins. One is it resembles, let's say, the money that is going around now, and the other one is that you reach the maximum money supply in 20 years. So and that's it. And demurrage is I do it per hour. And if you see we have it already running. We have our operational system. People can log in on our website, create an account, and have a let's say a wallet, and you can see 1 coin coming in every hour. And then you can see your demurrage. But the nice thing is that happens every hour. So every hour you see all your wealth going down a little bit, but 1 coin is added. So in actually the first 20 years, everybody will see is money supply increasing, and after 20 years, you get to a level where it can't, let's say, increase anymore unless you work, And so to me, this system is like a closed system. So inflation is gone. The demurrage makes sure that there's no inflation, and the nice thing is that when I looked at it, I think actually it's good to have a negative interest on money. It's better because that's where the value of money, let's say the store of value, and I learned these things all after I sort of designed it. So the store of value becomes almost unimportant, and yeah, it looks it's very nice. And what you also said in an earlier talk that I had with you is that you see other people like circles coming to the same conclusion. And so they also said the demurrage, but they also said the fungibility. So we had this, and I didn't talk about the fungibility. That last piece I wasn't able to tell you. But if you create a system like this, that transparency is also is just a logical conclusion. To me, this is all logic. For me, this story is also closed. I think that we can improve the checking of fraud in our system, but the rest is finished. So there's no more logic to add to it. The only thing that you need to do now, and for the 1 coin age system, is what do you do with companies when how do they have their own accounts? So these things need to be added. But to create money, this is, let's say, to me, it's like well, this is the logical conclusion, and other people are also coming to that same conclusion, which is sort of proves that it's sort of the same. I told the founders of Circles, I think when we just do some discussions, probably we end up with one system, because it doesn't matter. Yeah? So it is just a choice. Is it 7% or is it 35%? You just you do your best guess, and then you just choose that one. And I'm fine with either. If there are good arguments to make it lower or make it higher, then we change it. But the system is logic. It fits, and it's clean. To me, it's real clean logic. So that's nice.
We had a previous guest named Steph Kuipers. I don't know if you know of him or
I spoke with him. I spoke an hour with him 2 days ago, or a few days ago. Yeah,
Okay.
I know him quite well.
So yeah,
he couldn't be at the meeting, as he excused himself, so he's not here. Yeah.
He also advocates for a system of demurrage paired with UBI. As I expressed during the episode with him, I'm still not fully convinced that UBI is as you describe it, as being the only logical method for money creation. I'm certainly not convinced of that yet. I'm still open to considering that argument. But what I would like to hear you respond to is, I think that most hardcore capitalists, free market supporters would say that a UBI will cause people to lose the motivation to be productive. Why would someone continue to work hard if they know that all of their needs are going to be automatically met? So could you address that? And could you also tell me, do you consider yourself a believer in competitive free markets?
I'm 100% capitalist, full-blown capitalist. So I'm not a socialist at all. But to me, there are two ways to create money. So we can allow a small group to create it for themselves, and as it goes now, and that will always end in misery. So because all the wealth will be sucked up, and then they have a problem. So how are we going to protect ourselves and our wealth against all these people that we just fooled out of all their money? And that has nothing to do with capitalism. It's to me, it's like, this is like pure communism. Where we are now is pure communism or pure fascism. It's sort of two. It's like the same thing. We have a very small group that controls everything and only thinks about one thing: is how do we protect ourselves? That's their only issue. They don't have any other issues. They don't care about us. They never did. So why would they start now? So that is one way of money creation, where money creation will end. So what you can say, okay, these people are bad, so we remove these people and we now replace them by people that are good. But if these people that are good also are able to hide everything that they do, all their transactions, so they can go offshore to the Cayman Islands and with foundations that are not traceable. So when we allow that, what will happen is that new group will always suck all the wealth to themselves, And I don't blame them, if they would give me that opportunity. I don't know. I don't think I would be that bad, but it's always like, yeah, I'm a politician. I need an airplane to go to these important meetings. So that makes sense. No, that doesn't make sense. And that is. And what I also don't do, I don't call my system a UBI system. Actually, on my website, I said, what we do is not a UBI. Because a UBI is like an income, and an income sort of implies that you did something for it. No, and in our case, you don't do anything for it. You just participate in the creation of money. And that money, if you don't do it, it's you have the demurrage, it goes away and it gets distributed. So if you don't do anything, you will end up with very small amount of money. You get 1 coin every hour, but perhaps you only have 10 coins every day to do stuff, because you're lazy, you don't work. The people that work hard can make $1 million or perhaps a billion. I think billionaires will be more rare if you have like a 35% demurrage going on. But you will have millionaires. You will have, if you have a good idea, good factory, good workers, and you arrange everything very well, you can become a millionaire, and that's fine. I don't have any problems with that. But I think that if you are disabled, or if you are, let's say, demented, or you are a baby, there should be money to take care of you. So that shouldn't be an issue. And to me, that is not socialism. Socialism is to me is like, we have everything, and we make the conditions that where you are able to receive stuff, and that's why the story about about UBI is important. When it's unconditional, okay, then I'm for it. If it's conditional, I'm completely against it. I think it's horrible, where you need to jump to some hoops because somebody says, yeah, otherwise we take away the opportunity for you to have a proper food. It doesn't make any sense. There is and that's why my new initiative is called it's Copiania. Copia means plenty in Latin. It's about the world of plenty. There is so much wealth in this world. There's so much, so nobody needs to have hunger. For example, housing. I think 3 years of the military spendings will give everybody a house. Everybody. So it's just insanity. So what's going on is it doesn't make any sense. And all these things we can solve if you have a proper system.
Let me see if I understood you correctly. My question to you was, how do you address the common objection to UBI that it's would cause people to lose their motivation to work? Do I understand you correctly in that your answer to that question is that the money creation is just not a large enough sum for someone to sit back and live comfortably on it?
No. I think if wealth was distributed equally, that means that everybody has a house, everybody has a car, without loans, without mortgages. It's gone. It's just gone because all that stuff is already here. We only pay it to so that a few people can accumulate that wealth. But if you just strike all the debt that you can do easily, nothing happens when you do that, and you start creating a new system where everybody participates equally, then people can take possession of their houses. You need to arrange it; it will be a big mess. But in theory, all the infrastructure is there. We don't need to build it anymore. Right? So if the world population doesn't explode, it doesn't really explode at this moment. So the infrastructure is there. People can live. We don't need to pay that part. The only thing what needs to happen is that people work so that other people don't die. So we need to have farmers. We need to have and when we didn't have a financial system, people also worked. To me, there was a guy that had a comment. He said, "Yeah, there is a story about Donald Duck and the Dagobert was throwing out money and nobody worked anymore." But I think it's completely illogical to think that because, I'm sitting in my house. There's money coming in, but there's no food. Nobody makes food. So what are you going to do? You're going to sit and die and wait? No, you're going to do something. I need to feed my kids. So I need to do something. I can't buy it because nobody else is buying it or is working. That is sort of the thinking that is behind it, which doesn't make any sense. I think money is not the incentive to work. I think most people will do something, either art. I think what will happen is, especially because of the robotization, and my book was also about that. It will shift. A lot of, let's say, boring work will be done by computers and AI, and we let them do. These machines will do that work, so people have more time to do other things, which can be art, which can be architecture, which can be making incredible food, let's say culturally from this land or from that land is completely different. People can make real art out of all these things. And I think that is what will happen, instead of just doing this thing to just survive and be very efficient on your thing. When you don't need to care about, let's say, getting your bread on the table, it's not that you're going to sit and do nothing. You're going to do the things that you want to do. If I when I go through Africa and people say some things like that, I ask them, so if you don't need it to work for your food, what would you do? Oh yeah, then I would become an artist. I would become a footballer. I would become, there's and people are craftsmen also. So I would be going fashion. I would have my own fashion design. So everybody has dreams to do something, and nobody says, oh, I'm going to sit down and do nothing. There's nobody that says that, and that's also not the reality. They did a lot of tests with UBI. What happened is that if you provide people a certain amount of security, then they're going to think, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to buy, these tests were actually done in Africa also. People buy bicycles so they are able to transport their goods to other villages. They buy sewing machines so they can make they have their own clothing shop. That's what people do when they have a sort of UBI. So the first thing they do is sort of create some things for a shop so that they can do something and make money out of that. That is what people do usually, and there will be also people that do nothing. That let me be clear about that also.
Let me push back on this point and play devil's advocate a little bit. I live in an apartment, almost brand new apartment building, and when this building was built about a year and a half ago, they did something wrong with the plumbing, and so there was a leak in the apartment right below mine, and a plumber had to come in and jackhammer up all of the tiles in my bathroom and open up the pipes, and it was a months-long process of rectifying a really smelly situation. I mean, I could barely stand to be in my apartment while this was going on. And I thought to myself, that poor plumber who is in my bathroom having to do this horrible work, having to smell this horrible smell. In the system that you're describing, where people are relieved of the urgency to earn a living and feed themselves, and everyone is free to be a footballer or a musician or a ballet dancer, I'm concerned, and this is part of the reason why I'm still agnostic on the subject of UBI, that nobody is going to be willing to do that kind of work. How do you respond to that?
Everything has its price. So what will happen is that, because let's say that work is like, you don't need much skills. So a lot of people can do that job or think they can do the job, because there's still a lot of people that think they can do it and still make a mess out of it. But and these people need to work, so they will do it for this very low prices. But when, let's say, we have a UBI, these people will be paid a higher price, a higher, let's say, income for that, because you want to live in your house. And if they don't do it, you will study that you can do it yourself. But you need to have that problem solved. So that problem will be solved one way or another. And what I also think is that when you have like more income inequality, and you have more art and these kind of things, people will go more out, because now people are very isolated, because they're focused on let's say one thing to get the money. So they go to this job, they go back and they sleep, and so that's it. But when you have way more time, because you probably people have like 60-70% free time or even more, in when let's say you have a new kind of economy. I forgot my train of thought, but I think that there is more time for you to train yourself. So you will have, people will have way more skills than they have now, because now they are just focused on one thing, and the education is very poor, because sometimes they're just kids that start to work as a plumber, and they can't, let's say, create more skills like that. So there will be, but it will have a higher price. So you will have to pay more for your plumber. But I think you don't mind, because it just needs to be done. And I think also that jobs like that will likely be automated. And what also will happen is the quality of your house, but that's another story, if in the beginning will be better, because you have better machines, better robots, and that's sort of my other job that I'm doing. So I'm trying to get, let's say, affordable houses, but at a much higher quality. If I build, let's say, I could build your house in a factory, if I do it properly, you wouldn't have to touch it for the next 100 years, and everything would be designed in a way that you wouldn't have any issues. Because when we start to collect, and that's also another thing that I want to discuss that I'm discussing in my World of Abundance project. For example, patents, I think they need to go. I think people need to share the knowledge that is out there, so we can make let's say robots that do your plumbing, or things like that, solutions like that, or that we can design houses that are properly manufactured in a way that maintenance will never be an issue. We can do all these things, but now in a world of scarcity, we don't want that, because we want to have it in the cheapest possible way. So people just cut corners everywhere they can, and you end up with issues. In a world of abundance, we will have products that don't, like what they now produce in China. It's all arriving in Africa. It breaks down in 3 days or 4 days, but it's cheaper. So everybody buys that crap. It doesn't make any sense. So instead of paying a double amount and having a socket that works, they buy this cheap Chinese crap, and within a few months it breaks down and need to buy it again. But it's cheaper. So the mindset of people in this world of scarcity is just so bad. It doesn't make sense. And that also needs to change. And all these things are sort of connected to our financial system at what we have at the moment. I think that is sort of the way you need to think about these things.
Yeah, so maybe the answer to my question is that the plumbers will be the millionaires, because that's what it will cost to get them to.
Yeah, perhaps it's not the plumbing, but there will be jobs that are so insanely dirty or dangerous to do that only a few lunatics will do that, and they will be considered like heroes, and we applaud them. Yeah, because
I certainly agree that guy who suffered that smell for hours and hours in my bathroom should have been paid a lot more than I'm sure he was paid. So I can.
And I think and that is this voluntarily. So if it was up to you, if you would really sort of control your money, and now you don't, because you need to also be very careful with your money, because I need to survive tomorrow, so I can't pay him this much. But if you don't need to care about that much, then you will give him more. Then you would have paid him more, I think.
Okay.
And
I'd like to shift gears, because we've got a limited amount of time. There's a million different directions we could go. I don't know if you're aware or not, but I've talked in a number of times, both in the course that I did on Silvio Gesell, as well as in a number of past episodes of this series, that I am developing a model based on Silvio Gesell's proposals for community-owned land and demurrage currency, with the idea that it can be deployed at a local community level, and that is the best approach for challenging the status quo, because I don't think that there is any conceivable way that these ideas are going to be adopted through traditional channels. I don't think that the Democratic or the Republican Party is going to see the merits in these ideas and is going to start promoting them through national government. So the conclusion that I arrived at was that these ideas need to be implemented at a local community level, and if they prove viable, if they prove better than the alternative, then that will represent an economic engine for developing the resources to expand and multiply the number of implementations of the alternative system. So what is your vision for the process of implementing this system that you envision?
Yeah. So I think I was like you. Also, we need to have a small community. I was talking to people in Africa and in South America to where can you find a community to sort of start and try this. But in the meantime, let's say, also thinking about it longer, but also seeing what is going on in society, I don't think that is the way, sort of. I think it's still important, but it's not the strategy. I think we should change our strategy. And what I see is that all these small initiatives to sort of, I see what's going on like a big oil tanker that is going one way, which is like sort of a financial tyranny. So how can we divert this oil tanker? Because it's let's say all the governments are in this, and it doesn't matter who you vote for, left or right, it will always go this way. That is not, you can't change it. And some local communities that do something else and prove to work, if that is already possible, because people still need to buy a car. How do you do that in a local community? It's still a challenge. You can have some tricks to do that, but so you can sort of produce a lot of carrots, let's say a few ton of carrots, and then sort of barter that against a car. And so you go outside of your little bubble, you do an exchange like that, and then you continue with your own little bubble. That is sort of possible, but I don't think it will stop the oil tanker from going where it's going. So what I think should be the strategy is to exactly what you are doing. I think that is very important, to talk about this with people, and not only people that are economists, but also people in the street or that you meet in the sports club, and talk about it. Talk, and let them see the work that is done, and also let them see the dream that I call it dreamers, basically, and that is what I want to do with my Copiania website, is to make a sort of community to show people how the world and the economy could be different, and how different that would be from what we're doing now, so that they start to see what we're talking about, instead of just doing it in a little village and hoping that it will succeed, because nobody is looking at you. It's very difficult to get the entire attention of the world to this small community and see, okay, because I think, and that was, I think, a remark in one of your last podcasts, that economy is not a real science, because you can't have a sort of you can't have a control group. So you do something, but there's so many variables, you don't know if what is happening here is actually caused by what you did there, because there are many variables that you can't really control. And actually there's so many that even if you have a village that succeeds, when let's say that the entire world is watching them, is the fact that the entire world is watching this little group not the reason that they will succeed? Because when you have another group that nobody is really looking at, will these people act the same? You don't know. So it's very difficult to draw these conclusions. But what is important is that we really focus on. So I think a lot of people know these are the things that are wrong. This is what we don't want. A lot of people, and that's where a lot of discussions are going about. That these are the subjects of a lot of discussions. But I think that is wrong. We are too much focusing on the things that are wrong. We should shift our focus to the things what we can achieve, and we need to sort of define it. So this is what we're going to do. This is the financial system. This is the legal system that is sort of connected to it. This is the let's say the healthcare system. This is how people can do these things and really map it out. Make movies about it. Make whatever it takes, but make people see what we can achieve. What is the goal that where we're going to? Instead of just saying, okay, let's try this or try that, and then we tried and then still. But this overall view, how this world really could be, and why is it, and explain what is wrong, and if we do this and this and this and this, but also this and this different, then we have this. So, for example, what I told you about the infrastructure, all the infrastructure in the world is there. I never hear anybody saying, okay, what happens when all the debt is just gone, when we just stop doing that, we take a new financial system, we take possession of everything that is already here. What will happen? Is there a study about that? No, I don't think so. Nobody has done that. Why? Because that to me makes sense. These are our tools. We have all these tools already here. And we need to make something with these tools that works instead of something that causes a lot of suffering. So how do we use these things? How do we use the real estate that is there? So if we strike all the debt, what will happen? Who is going to live in which house? So I would propose make a sort of a cadastre, I think is an English word, like a book, a cadastre. It's like a book where all the ownership of the houses is registered. But make one. What would if all the debt was gone? Who is taking possession of which real estate? We can already sort of start thinking about that, mapping that out, so that when the system collapses, let's say there's a huge hyperinflation global moment that nobody can pay their mortgages anymore. What are we going to do with all that real estate? Is it all going to the banks? What is the bank going to do with it? They need to have people that can live there and can use it, because if they don't, all that real estate will be gone. So now let's say if that happens, what are we going to do exactly? Who is going to live where? How are we going to defend that? How are we going to make court cases that we say, okay, you lived there for 1 year, you just bought it, you lived there for 30 years, you paid for everything, you have a house, you paid, let's say, 1 year of mortgage, which is like 10 times bigger of this person that paid his entire mortgage. Is it reasonable that this person lives in that house the small house where he is all paid off, and that the person that just bought a house with a big loan, that he also stays in his house? Is that reasonable? How are we going to go about a situation like that? And that's just one example, and you can make like thousands of issues that sort of occur. How would you go about it?
Yeah, how do you answer those questions? I mean, this is why I don't yet believe in the top-down paradigm shift model, because I think that you end up with an impossible number of different specific questions of the kind that you just described, and who makes those determinations. And this is another reason why my preference is essentially, I describe my approach as go where they're not. there's a lot of empty space in this world still, even with 8 billion people on it. Go where they're not and start building something different. And if what you're building is better, then it will naturally and organically grow to challenge and potentially eclipse the dysfunctional system. But what I'm not understanding in what you're describing is the path to practical implementation.
It's not a path. So what I say, it's this, let's say the system we were in is not sustainable. I expect a big event. I don't believe, like, let's say, in a gradual change. And that's why also we didn't discuss it yet. I talk about ethical money. And so I think what, let's say, the one coin H solution, that is ethical money. It's ethical because it's distributed equally. You can't mix that with unethical money. It's just not possible. So I can have an island where I do this, but once I let other people with unethical money come in and which has value, and they buy up the stuff that we created, we still, because that unethical money can be printed out of nowhere. It's just not fair. So once you start mixing that, it doesn't work. So the gradual, let's say, implementation of one coin, I don't see it happen. It won't happen gradually. What I see happen is that what we are in now is not sustainable. It will collapse. There will be it always collapsed. And what we do is you can do nothing, and then you have gangs that just, take possession of stuff, and then they create another financial system as we did, like 10 times, 100 times before, and we have the same issues. Or if you can say, okay, when something like this happens now, we're going to do it better. We're going to have a financial system with that we properly thought about. We're not going to use gold and silver anymore. We're going to use something with a demurrage, and where the distribution is equal, where no small group can take control of it. So these things should be in place. So when this big event happens, can be World War III or whatever, then this is sort of what we should do. If we don't do that, then nature will take its course. It will be for a few years the right of the strongest, and rape and plunder, and everybody will, and then that will settle again somewhere. But I think, why? We can do it better this time.
I don't know if you tuned into the first episode with Steve Keen, but he has a pretty grim outlook on the future, specifically as it relates to climate, and he essentially believes that maybe 10% of the human population is going to survive the coming catastrophe. That's a pretty horrific, almost unthinkable scenario that obviously, if there's any way to avoid that kind of catastrophe, we should try to find it. Sounds to me like you're kind of describing something that could be as abrupt and potentially destructive as what he was.
Yeah, no, I need to, sorry. Yeah, I understand your question. Sorry, I'm always like this. I try to answer the questions too quickly when I start to understand them. So, but I think I know what you want to say. Sorry about that. What I think is that there are a few scenarios, and you can't predict them. Nobody knows the future, and that 90% will die, I think is not unthinkable. I don't think it's climate change actually, but I can imagine wars and famines that destroy nations very easily. So if we don't, and that's also sort of why I'm in Africa, I think the people least affected will be people in Africa, because they know how to survive, how to deal with this. But people in Europe have no chance. They will die like they did in the Second World War. So, and that sort of city population, because it's especially the city population that are in danger at the moment, I think. But okay, so an event like that can happen. But what I think is that what we do, and that is sort of my new strategy, is that we're going to dream about it. We're going to say, this is the best future that we have. This is how it should look like. But in the meantime, we're not going to fight the status quo. We're not going to put scratches on that oil tanker to hope that it will turn, because that is just a waste of time. We should really focus on this dream. This is what we want to have. This is what we want to do, and that needs a lot of work, and especially to put that in the mind of as many people as possible, and that is key. Because if you have just a few little spots that are working on the future, this big oil tanker will just go on and crush them. And especially if you are starting to cause a danger for the status quo, they're going to crush you. They're just going to bomb you or whatever. They said, oh, it was an accident, sorry, and it's gone. Yeah. So they don't care. So that is a waste of time in my opinion. So instead of fighting them, because when you fight this system, you will also get hurt. They will start to target you. I say, don't fight them. Just go along what is going on. Just make yourself survive. Educate yourself. But the most important thing is to talk to other people, to make them understand this is the system where we're in. It is wrong. There's no way this is going to end well. We need to think about something else. Now, if we have like 100 million people or 500 million people that understand this, then it might just happen. Then it might happen. And I have a quote here on my, and that is really an amazing quote, I think, from Michel Foucault. He's a French philosopher. Let me read it to you. The greatest form of resistance to power is not confrontation, but refusal. Power thrives on submission, on the expectation that we will comply. The most effective way to deny it is not by fighting it head on, but by withdrawing what it craves, or consent, or participation, or obedience. When we stop feeding the system, it loses its grip. Power is only as strong as the consent it receives. Deny it and it withers. So it basically says, so don't fight it, but try to get yourself into a position that you are able to say, I turn my back now, I have enough. We're going to go somewhere else now, and we're going to do it with so many people that you have no chance. So we're not going to fight you. We're just going to stop. We stop paying our, but we do it en masse. It only works if there's and I think it should be sort of combined with a moment that people say, okay, now we know this is not going to. Now our children are in danger, our families are in danger. We really need to turn away from this thing now. And then we need to know what we're going to do, because only a few things is too little. We need to know what we're going to do with the real estate. What are we going to do with the money system? What are we going to do with healthcare? Normally, what happens after a big war is that the farmers become the most important people in the country. After the war in the Netherlands, for example, the farmers, they were like the plumbers that you need, sort of. They were the gods, because they could provide food. If you are good with the farmers, you are safe. And I think it's heartbreaking to me, really. I really am, my heart is crying over what they are doing to the farmers around the world. They're just destroying them. They're making big, let's say, multinational companies out of them. All their knowledge is gone. They're destroying the land. It's just horrible. And these people they don't know what to do. And I think it's sort of our obligation to give them this dream. So, and that's also what I want to do with these podcasts, is to let them know we are working on a way out of them. What I would like to see is that the farmers that now are sold out. So in the Netherlands now, they just get sold out. So we have programs just to get rid of them. They are just paid to move out of their land. It's ridiculous. And these people, they don't know what to do. They have generations they were farmers. Now they're gone. And what I hope is that let's say we can move we can get this movement going, and that the know-how that is still with these people is there, but that also that we know that okay, when we going back to or we're not back, but when we going to this other situation where we can bring the farmers back to that place, that we still know where these farmers came from which land, that we can bring them back with their families, and then they can do their farming again. So to provide this new community with their knowledge and their perfect foods and everything that they are supposed to do. And that is sort of what that perspective I want them to give to them, and include them in this group. And it's not only the farmers; it's also healthcare workers, everybody. So everybody that is sort of frustrated about their jobs. I think a lot of people that really want to do their job properly, they feel frustrated because they need to work 80 hours and they don't get the proper tools to do it, because everything is scarce. In the world of plenty, we will provide all these tools. They will be able, they have the time, they have the means and to do their job properly. And we need to give them that perspective, let them join this group of dreaming people, and get to this better future when it's arrived. And how that will go, I don't know. But better prepare than just do nothing and just hope for the best, sort of. And that's
this is all a great advertisement for this series, as I see it. This is exactly why this series exists. And I love the Foucault quote that you just shared. I think that hits on a central theme which has run through multiple episodes of this series, that direct confrontation with the mainstream system is pointless, and there's no way to prevail in that way. And therefore, the best approach is withdrawal of our energies from that system. I believe wholeheartedly in that approach.
Yeah.
Patrick,
it's actually counterproductive, because when you fight them, you will lose, and they make like an example out of you to mock you. They can say, "Oh, you see these guys that want to do something else. You see the 20 people. Well, where are they now? They're nowhere. They lost everything. Half of them died, whatever. So nobody will try again. So it doesn't work, and you shouldn't even want to go there. Just leave it. Just go to. Yeah, sorry.
Let me ask you one last question. We're just about at the 2-hour mark. Given that this series is produced by the Silvio Gesell Foundation and the Henry George School, we kind of need to talk about the land subject. I find it fascinating, actually, that you came out of the real estate world and found what you believe to be the solution in the realm of monetary systems, but I haven't heard you speak about the question of land ownership, which of course is central to both Silvio Gesell and Henry George. So could we just get a few minutes on your thoughts on that subject before we wrap up?
Yeah, it's sort of the question that I sort of feared, because and your last guest or the one before also said that or a podcast that I saw said he doesn't really know which way to go, which let's say the Henry George approach was better than the Silvio Gesell approach. The only thing that came into, I tried to study it because I was fearing this question. I need to have something to say there. But the only thing that came in my mind was like the Indians, how the Indians used their land, and that in their conception it's not even possible to own it. So, and that sort of rings a bell. And it should be like that. So, and to me, if it's being taxed or is being sort of how you call it?
Owned by the community.
Yeah, it's like where you sell the land to the community with the highest bidder. So these are the two solutions: tax it or sell it to the highest bidder. So which one is better?
Lease it.
What
lease
I
it.
think,
That's better.
yeah, I thought that one was like the government would take all the land and then sell it to the highest bidder.
Lease it. Lease
Oh,
it to the highest bidder. That's
lease
the
it.
Italian.
Oh, lease it. Yeah. Yeah, you can't own it. No, of course, lease it to the highest. Yeah, lease it to the highest bidder. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. I'm not a big believer in government, so both of them are to me as like doesn't sound. It's not that I need to choose between these two, because I actually I don't want a government to own the land, because then you say, oh, the government is now owning the land, which is also not. So now they're in a position to lease it out. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't see really what that solves. I would say, and that's what I like about the Indians is and the voluntarism society based on voluntarism, is that you could leave it to the people that use it and possess it on a voluntary basis. So in your community, you can say, okay, you want to be a farmer, we allow you to do this, but now you are have the fruits of that land, which sort of is also ours. We expect for you to give a larger portion of your income to this community here that cannot do this, but that should be on a sort of voluntary basis. So people, I think that might work. Strangely, so I'm a capitalist that also believes in voluntary stuff. That's because capitalists normally wants to do everything in contracts, and if you don't do this, then we go with the police and we're going to possess your building. And that's sort of the capitalism. But I think it's also possible in a voluntary way. But then you need another financial system. I think when you have an ethical financial system, it could be that this can be done in a sort of voluntarily way. Or you need to have, let's say, a city council, and not really a government, but more a council. I love in Africa actually the elderly councils that are still here in the villages. So you have villages that have just a bunch of these old guys sitting on chairs, and they're sitting all day drinking alcohol and taking decisions about what's going on, and that works. It works quite well, actually. So all these kind of systems you can think about. But but I agree, land shouldn't be owned, and especially not being hoarded. That is because it leads to the same atrocities as what we have with the financial system now. So I'm on the same page, and but it was not really on my radar before this meeting, the ground issue, let's say. So.
All right. Well, that's probably a good place to wrap it up. Maybe we'll do this again at some point in the future. I feel like that last 5-minute section could be the launching pad for another 2-hour discussion about
Absolutely.
how to deal with the land issue. So maybe we'll do that sometime in the future. So Teun, thank you so much. Fascinating.
Yeah, you too.
Conversation, and appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Teun.
Yeah, thank you so much for your platform and your work. It's really amazing, I must say. Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.